At my wedding, my wife whispered, "Pay me $8,000 a month, or I'll leave you for your wealthy brother." In the blink of an eye, Alex's perfect world was torn apart by one shocking ultimatum from his bride, Lila. But what happens after he walks away? You won't believe the betrayal, the lies, and the stunning twists that unfold. Don't go anywhere, this story is only getting started. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the day I had imagined for years. Since the moment I first met Lila, standing at the altar, staring at her as she looked like an angel in that white lace gown, her eyes sparkling with excitement and beauty, my heart was racing. I thought this was everything I ever wanted. Lila was the woman who stole my heart effortlessly. Her laughter, her charm, the way she made even the simplest moments feel magical. She was my world. We had been together for 3 years, and I never once questioned that she was the one. Today was the day we were going to be married, surrounded by our closest family and friends in a grand, luxurious estate. The venue was breathtaking, polished marble floors, chandeliers that cost more than a year's worth of rent, and floral arrangements so beautiful they could have come straight from a high-end magazine. Every detail had been perfect, just as Lila had insisted. The 4-course meal, the string quartet playing soft melodies in the background, the flawless setup, all of it was exactly as she dreamed. And I was happy to give her that. I was the luckiest man in the world. There was no doubt in my mind. I stood there, waiting for her to take the final steps toward me, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had everything. A successful career, a beautiful fiancé, and a family who, despite their flaws, supported me. At least that's what I thought. Lila's smile lit up the entire room, and when she gazed at me, it felt like the whole world was watching. Yet all I could see was her. It was the kind of moment that made all the struggles, the frustrations of life, fade into the background. It was supposed to be our moment. But then, just as the officiant started speaking, Lila leaned in close, so close that I could feel the warmth of her breath on my ear. For a moment, I thought she was going to whisper something sweet, something that would make my heart swell even more. Instead, she whispered words that shattered everything. "You have to pay me $8,000 every month, or I will marry your brother Ethan." The world seemed to stop for a moment, and I couldn't process what she just said. I stood there, frozen, my heart dropping into the pit of my stomach. I must have misheard her. This couldn't be real. My mind raced, trying to come up with some explanation, some reason for her to say such a thing. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe she was nervous, trying to break the tension with something absurd. But when I pulled back to look at her, I saw no hint of hesitation in her eyes, no nervous laugh, no sign of anything but cold, hard seriousness. She wasn't joking. She was making a demand. She was telling me that, unless I gave her $8,000 every month, she would marry my brother instead. Ethan. My older brother, the golden boy in the family, the one who could do no wrong, the one who always seemed to have everything fall into place, without even trying, the one who my parents always compared me to. Ethan, the perfect son, the successful one, the one everyone adored. He had everything: looks, charm, confidence, everything I felt I was always lacking. And now, standing there in front of me, in front of everyone, my fiancée, my soon-to-be wife, was threatening me with him. I turned to look at Ethan, who was standing a few rows in front, with that smirk on his face, the smirk he always had, like he had everything under control. And in that moment, I realized something even worse. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't shocked by Lila's words. In fact, he looked almost pleased, like he had been waiting for this very moment. My mind raced even faster now, my pulse quickening as the full impact of what was happening set in. This wasn't just a random threat. This wasn't some emotional outburst from Lila. No, this was planned. She had made up her mind. She was using me as a stepping stone to get to someone better, someone richer, someone more like Ethan. I couldn't breathe. I felt the weight of betrayal crash over me, as if a ton of bricks had just fallen on my chest. I wanted to scream, to yell, to demand an explanation from her. How could she do this? How could she treat me like this, in front of everyone, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life? But I couldn't. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of my parents. Not in front of Ethan, who was still standing there, with that damn smirk on his face. Instead, I stood tall, trying to steady my breath, trying to keep my voice steady, to keep the calm exterior that everyone expected. "No," I said, my voice firm, shaking only slightly with the effort to maintain control. Lila blinked, her expression never wavering. She didn't even flinch at my refusal. Instead, she turned to Ethan. "I think I made a mistake," she said, her voice sweet as honey, carrying across the room so everyone could hear. "I should be marrying you." Gasps filled the room. The entire room seemed to shift, like the air had changed. And everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see how I would react. But Ethan didn't do what I expected. He didn't laugh. He didn't try to defuse the situation. No. He smiled like he had been waiting for this moment all along. He stepped forward, without hesitation, like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was it. The truth hit me harder than any blow. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't a crisis of conscience on Lila's part. This was a setup, a scheme. And I had been the fool all along. My parents, who were sitting there watching, didn't look surprised either. They weren't angry. They weren't upset. No, they were pleased. Pleased that Ethan had won. Pleased that my failure had given him the opportunity to shine once again. For a second, I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. My chest tightened, and I almost couldn't breathe. My parents had never truly supported me. They had always preferred Ethan. The successful one. The charming one. The one who never had to try. And here they were, cheering him on, not a single ounce of support for me. I was nothing more than a placeholder in their eyes. A shadow. I took a step back, then another, my feet moving without me even thinking. I didn't know where I was going. I just had to get out of there. I had to escape. The room was spinning, the voices of the guests fading as I walked away, their stares following me like burning coals. I could still hear Lila's voice, sweet as ever, calling out to Ethan. And I could still feel the weight of my parents' disappointment. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked out of that church, out of that life, and into a future I had no idea how to face. All I knew was that I would never let them use me again. I couldn't breathe. The words she had whispered to me were still ringing in my ears like a bomb that had just exploded in my chest. "You have to pay me $8,000 every month. Or I will marry your brother, Ethan." How could she say that? How could she ask for that? The room around me felt like it was closing in, the laughter and chatter of our guests fading into a muffled hum as I stared at Lila, standing there in her wedding gown, looking every bit the angel she had always been to me. But now, she was a stranger. A complete stranger. For a moment, time seemed to stop. I just stood there, frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. I had no words. What was I supposed to say to that? No one had ever, in my wildest dreams, prepared me for this moment. I had imagined 1,000 scenarios for this day, joyful ones, full of love, promises for the future, but this wasn't part of the plan. My mind was racing, trying to process what she had said, trying to make sense of it. But it was like trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that didn't fit. I looked down at my hands, shaking slightly, and then back at her. Her eyes were still locked onto mine, not a flicker of doubt, not a hint of hesitation. She meant it. Lila was dead serious. There was no joke here, no playful teasing. I could see it in her eyes. And when I turned to Ethan, standing in the front row, his smile was like a knife, cold and calculating. Ethan, my brother. The one who always seemed to have everything that I didn't. The one who could do no wrong in the eyes of our parents. The golden boy. I had spent my whole life trying to step out of his shadow. I tried to make a name for myself. Tried to prove that I was just as good, just as capable, just as worthy of their love and attention. But now, I was standing there, at the altar, watching as Lila used him as a bargaining chip in a twisted game. I never even knew we were playing. It was like the ground beneath me shifted. I had spent years building this future with Lila, dreaming about the life we would share, the family we would create. But now, in one instant, that dream had shattered. She wasn't here to marry me. She was here to marry whoever could give her what she wanted. And that wasn't me. Not anymore. I could feel the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me, suffocating me. I had always been second place to Ethan, always the one who had to work harder, be smarter, do more just to get a fraction of the recognition he effortlessly received. And now, here was Lila, the woman I thought I would spend my life with, saying that if I didn't pay her, she would take Ethan instead. She would leave me, right here, in front of everyone. I felt sick. The betrayal was sharp, like a knife slicing through the fabric of everything I thought I knew about love and family. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand an explanation. To drag her off that stage and make her tell me why. Why me? Why was I not good enough? But I didn't. I couldn't. The last thing I wanted was to make a scene. To give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack in front of our guests. In front of my family. So, I held it in. I forced myself to breathe. To steady my racing heart. To control the anger and the hurt and the confusion threatening to tear me apart. No, I finally said, the word coming out sharper than I expected. My voice was steady, even though inside, I felt like I was breaking. No, Lila. I'm not going to do that. She blinked, just once, but I could see at the smallest flicker of surprise in her eyes. She wasn't expecting me to refuse. She probably thought I would cave, that I would give her what she wanted, just like I always had. But this time, it was different. I wasn't going to let her use me anymore. I wasn't going to be her stepping stone, her safety net, her backup plan. I deserved more than that. But then, she did something I never saw coming. She turned to Ethan. Her voice was sweet, honeyed, like nothing had changed. I think I made a mistake, she said, her words carrying through the room, crisp and clear. I should be marrying you. The room erupted in shocked gasps. The guests stirred, exchanging nervous glances, unsure of what was happening. But there was Ethan, stepping forward with that smirk still on his face, looking like he had won, looking like this was exactly how he had planned it. He wasn't surprised. He didn't flinch. He wasn't embarrassed by what was happening. No. He smiled, like he had been waiting for this moment all along. It was like a punch to the gut. I had been blind. The whole time, I had been played. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision for Lila. She had planned this. She had been using me, stringing me along, just waiting for the right moment to make her move. And Ethan? He had known. He had known all along that I wasn't the one she wanted. He wasn't surprised by her words. He wasn't shocked. He was just waiting for her to choose him. My parents. I looked to them, hoping for some sign that they would defend me, that they would put an end to this insanity. But no. My mother was dabbing at her eyes, not with sadness, but with something else, something closer to relief. My father was nodding, as if this was just another business transaction, another smart move for the family. It hit me then, like a cold wave crashing over me. They were fine with this. They were happy about it. They had always been happy with Ethan, always praised him, always pushed me aside. And now, they were fine with Lila making the same choice. I could feel the bile rising in my throat. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. The truth was sinking in like a stone, and I couldn't escape it. I was nothing to them. I had been nothing to them all along. Just a backup. A placeholder. A second choice. And now, Lila was proving it to me, in front of everyone. For a brief moment, I wanted to shout, to tell her exactly what I thought of her. I wanted to grab her and shake her, to demand she explain herself. But instead, I straightened my shoulders. I took one step back, then another. I turned, and without a word, I walked away. I couldn't stay there, not with them, not with Lila, not with Ethan. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to leave. I needed to get away from all of them, away from the humiliation, away from the betrayal. As I walked out of the venue, the whispers and stares followed me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I had already lost everything. There was nothing left for me in that room. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, I realized something. I was free. Free from the lies, free from the manipulation, free from the expectations. For the first time in my life, I wasn't tied to anyone. I wasn't tied to Lila, or Ethan, or my family. I was free to walk away and never look back. Oh, this is getting intense. Alex is out, but does that really mean he's free? Or is the real game just beginning? Think you know where this is headed? Comment your predictions below. What do you think is going to happen next in this twisted drama? Comment. 1 if you think for a shocking revenge. Comment 2 if you think for a painful confrontation. You have 10 seconds to comment. Start nows. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for taking the time to comment. Now, let's dive back into this thrilling story. I had barely stepped out of the wedding venue before my mind began to race uncontrollably. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the whisper from Lila. The way her words had crushed everything I had worked for. Everything I thought I had. The $8,000 a month, the ultimatum, the betrayal, it was all so unreal. But the worst part? The look on Ethan's face. He hadn't even hesitated. The smug smile, the sense of entitlement that seemed to radiate from him as he stepped forward to claim her. As if he had been waiting for this day his whole life. And my parents? My so-called parents? They weren't even shocked. They didn't even try to defend me. They stood there, nodding, accepting, as if this was the natural order of things. I needed to get away from it all. The betrayal had sliced through me so deep. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to breathe again. I walked down the street aimlessly, the city's lights flickering above me, the sounds of the traffic blending into a background hum I could barely hear. I didn't care where I was going. All I knew was that I needed to be far away from them. Far away from the wreckage of what should have been the happiest day of my life. I could feel my pulse still racing in my ears, the anger still bubbling beneath the surface. But I had to stay calm. I couldn't let them see me break, not after everything. The first few blocks felt like nothing more than a blur. My body moved on autopilot, while my mind screamed in frustration, in disbelief. How had this happened? How had everything fallen apart so quickly, so utterly? I had spent years of my life trying to prove to my family, to Ethan, to Lila, that I was worthy of their love, their attention. And now, standing in the cold, empty streets of the city, it was all gone. I had been nothing more than a placeholder in their lives. A stepping stone, that's all I had been to Lila. And to Ethan. I couldn't shake the image of Lila standing at the altar, her eyes locked onto mine, her lips curling into that sweet smile, as she made her demand. I could still hear her voice in my head, clear as day. I'll marry Ethan unless you give me $8,000 a month. The way she had looked at me when I said no, there was no regret. No remorse, just cold indifference. I had been a fool. A goddamn fool to think that she loved me. I found myself at a small cafe, tucked away on a quiet corner of the street. The kind of place where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, and the atmosphere was warm, inviting, as if it could offer me some semblance of comfort. But nothing could comfort me now. I stepped inside, not even sure why I had walked in. I sat down at the back of the cafe, away from the windows, away from the world outside. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want anyone to recognize me. I stared at my phone, still buzzing in my pocket. I knew who it was. Lila. She had been calling me over and over again. I could feel the weight of her messages, the desperate, pleading tone in each one. But I couldn't bring myself to pick it up. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Not after everything. She didn't deserve an explanation. She didn't deserve my attention anymore. I ordered a coffee, something automatic, something that gave me a moment of distraction from the whirlwind of emotions still spinning inside me. The cup trembled slightly in my hands as I brought it to my lips. The bitter taste burned down my throat, but it didn't do anything to numb the pain. The pain of betrayal. The pain of realizing that the person I had given everything to, my trust, my love, my future, had never truly cared about me. And then, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The desperation in her voice when I read her words made my stomach churn. Please come back. We need to talk. I made a mistake. A mistake? That was all she had to say after everything? A mistake? I exhaled sharply, the anger bubbling up again. But I stayed calm. I had to. I had learned that I couldn't let her control me. She had done it for too long. And now, it was my turn to take control of my life. I had to be strong. For myself. A few more minutes passed, and the phone buzzed again. This time, a call. I almost didn't pick it up. I was so damn tempted to just block her number. To never speak to her again. But something in me, maybe it was the remnants of the love I had for her. Maybe it was the last thread of hope that she would explain herself, made me answer. Alex, she said, her voice shaking, her breath ragged. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Please, please come back. We need to talk. My grip tightened around the phone, the words slipping from my lips before I could stop myself. What is there to talk about, Lila? You made your choice. You chose Ethan. You don't get to come back from that. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her trying to catch her breath, her panic rising. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. No, you don't understand, she said, her voice small now, filled with desperation. Something went wrong. Ethan, he's gone. He left me. That stopped me. For a second, I felt the air leave my lungs. Ethan? Gone? What did she mean by that? I thought she had everything planned. I thought Ethan had been the one who had orchestrated this whole thing. What was happening now? Wait, I said, my voice quieter, a new edge of curiosity seeping through. What do you mean he's gone? What happened? She paused for a long moment. I don't know. He just left. He was supposed to sign the papers, but he just walked away. He won't answer his phone, and I don't know what to do. For the first time since the wedding, I felt something other than rage. Fear? No. It wasn't fear, exactly. But there was something unsettling about the way she spoke. Something that didn't add up. Ethan had always been in control. He had always been the one pulling the strings. But now, he had left her? And she was alone? I stood up, pacing around the cafe, trying to think. Trying to make sense of this new development. So, you want me to come back and fix everything? Is that it? I asked, my voice a bit sharper than I intended. No, I need you. I need your help, she whispered, her voice cracking with desperation. I paused. The old part of me, the part that still cared for her, the part that wanted to fix everything, that wanted to believe she hadn't done this intentionally, wanted to give in. But I couldn't. I couldn't be that person anymore. Not after what she did to me. Not after everything. I put the phone down on the table, taking a deep breath. Lila, I'm done. I'm done being your backup. I'm done being anyone's backup. You made your choice, and now you have to deal with the consequences. And with that, I ended the call. The air felt thick as I stood there, my phone pressed tightly to my ear. Still trying to process what Lila had just said. Ethan was gone? My mind spun, a million questions racing through my head, none of them making any sense. How could he just leave? How could everything, all of their plans, unravel like this? For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a tiny flicker of something other than rage, something almost like confusion, mixed with a touch of curiosity. I had always thought Ethan was untouchable. The perfect golden boy in our family. The one who never had to try, the one everyone loved. He had always been the one to win, the one everyone expected to come out on top. And now, here he was, abandoning Lila at the altar, leaving her in the wreckage of their carefully crafted scheme. I glanced around, the small cafe where I had taken refuge now feeling even more suffocating. The tables were filled with quiet chatter. The air thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the hum of people going about their lives. Oblivious to the storm raging inside me. But I wasn't ready to go back. I wasn't ready to face the mess that was still unfolding at the wedding. The idea of seeing Lila again, after everything, made my stomach churn. I couldn't even begin to process how I felt about her anymore. Betrayal, anger, confusion. These emotions clashed with each other, like a war raging inside me. Alex. Lila's voice was a whisper now, filled with desperation, almost pleading. Please, I need you. I don't know what happened. I don't know why he left. I couldn't help it. A small laugh escaped my lips, dark and bitter. You don't know why? You don't know? Are you serious, Lila? How many more lies do I have to hear from you? You think I'm just going to come back and fix this? You think I'm just going to step in and clean up the mess you made? I could hear her breathing, shallow, panicked. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to me pushing back. I had always been the one who forgave, the one who made excuses, the one who never gave up. But not anymore. I wasn't that person anymore. You don't understand, she said, her voice shaking. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought we were. She trailed off, the words hanging in the air like a broken promise. I thought if I could just get him to choose me, I'd finally have everything I wanted. But I didn't know he'd leave. I didn't know he'd just walk away from me. I don't know what to do, Alex. Please. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady, like the ground beneath me had shifted again. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, my body burning with frustration. I didn't know what to feel anymore. I should have felt victorious, right? I should have felt like I had won, like I had reclaimed some part of myself. But all I could feel was this heavy weight, the crushing reality that everything I had built, everything I thought I knew, had been a lie. I looked down at my phone, still in my hand, her pleading voice echoing in my head. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at her, demand that she tell me everything, that she explain to me how I had been so blind, how I had allowed her to use me, how I had let her manipulate me into thinking she cared. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was done with that. I was done being her safety net, done being her second choice. So, what now, Lila? I said, my voice quieter now. Cold, cutting through the air between us like a blade. Now that Ethan's gone, now that you're standing there, all alone, what do you want from me? You expect me to pick up the pieces for you? You expect me to come back and pretend like none of this happened? There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment, I almost thought she had hung up. But then, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do, Alex. I'm scared. I couldn't help it. A bitter laugh escaped me again. Scared? You're scared now? You weren't scared when you were using me to get what you wanted, were you? The words stung, but I couldn't stop them. They were like a release, like a small part of me finally breaking free from the chains she had wrapped around me for so long. I never meant to hurt you, Alex, she said, her voice barely audible now. I thought we could be happy together. I thought we could have a future. But now. She trailed off, her voice breaking. I don't know what to do. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. It was the same old story, wasn't it? She had always been so convincing, so charming, so good at making me believe in the fantasy we had created together. But that was all. It was just a fantasy. A dream I had built up in my head, a dream that had come crashing down around me. And now, she was asking me to fix it, to make it all better. But I couldn't. I couldn't be that person anymore. You made your choice, Lila, I said, my voice hard. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. I'm not going to be your backup. I'm not going to be the one you run to when things go wrong. I'm done. There was silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought maybe she would finally understand. Maybe she would finally get it. But then, she spoke again, her voice shaking with desperation. Please, Alex, I need you. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. Please, come back. I can't do this without you. I closed my eyes, the words cutting through me like a knife. But I knew what I had to do. I knew I couldn't go back to her. Not now. Not after everything. She had betrayed me. She had used me. And I wasn't going to let her do it anymore. No, Lila, I said firmly, my voice resolute, I'm done. I'm done being the one who cleans up your messes. I'm done being the one who picks up the pieces of your broken promises. I'm done. And there's nothing you can say to change that. I hung up the phone before she could say another word, the finality of it settling over me like a heavy weight. It was over, finally. But even as I stood there, my heart still heavy with everything that had happened, a part of me couldn't help but wonder what came next. What was I supposed to do now? Where was I supposed to go from here? I didn't have all the answers, but one thing was certain, I wasn't going to be anyone's second choice anymore. Not ever again. I didn't know what I expected after hanging up on Lila. Part of me thought I would feel relieved, like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, I felt like a man lost at sea, adrift, with nothing to cling to but the fading remnants of a life I once thought I had figured out. The world around me seemed to blur as I walked aimlessly through the streets. My mind kept circling back to Lila, to the way she had looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and false sincerity. She wanted to fix things. She wanted me to believe that everything she had done was some kind of mistake. But I knew better now. I wasn't going to fall for that again. I found myself standing in front of my apartment building, my feet frozen to the ground. The lights from the city outside were dim, but everything felt so overwhelming, so suffocating. My phone buzzed again, and I almost ignored it, convinced that it would be another message from Lila. But when I checked, it wasn't her. It was a number I didn't recognize, and my heart skipped a beat as I realized it was a call from Lucas. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the screen, unsure of whether or not to answer. Why was he calling me? What more could he possibly have to say? He had been part of this mess, too. He had stood by and watched as Lila betrayed me, as my family chose him over me, over and over again. I had spent my whole life trying to prove that I wasn't just the other son, the one who didn't measure up. And now, he was the one reaching out to me. I answered, my voice tight with barely contained emotion. What do you want, Lucas? For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, his voice came through, calm and collected, as if nothing had changed. Hey, bro. Where did you run off to? The nonchalant tone made my blood boil. How could he sound so casual, so unaffected, when everything in my life was falling apart? When Lila, the woman I had trusted, had thrown me aside like a worthless object. And Ethan, the man who had been my brother, had just walked away without a second thought, leaving her in the dust. I don't know where you get off calling me bro right now, I said through gritted teeth. You know damn well what just happened. I don't need to hear your smug little voice acting like everything's fine. There was a pause on the other end, and when Lucas spoke again, his tone had shifted slightly. But there was still that underlying arrogance, that air of superiority that I hated so much. Look, I didn't ask for this, either. I didn't ask for her to throw herself at me like she did. But you've got to understand, she wasn't gonna stick with you. You couldn't give her what she wanted. I could. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I almost dropped the phone. He was saying it. He was saying what I had been too afraid to admit to myself. That Lila had never cared about me. That she had only seen me as a stepping stone, a bridge to something better. She had always known that, deep down, she wanted him. And now he was confirming it, confirming everything I had tried to deny. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let him see how much his words hurt. I couldn't let him win. You really think you've won, don't you? I asked, my voice low, dangerously calm. You think that just because you walked away with her, because she's suddenly your problem now, that you've beaten me? That you've gotten everything I couldn't? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Lucas laughed. A laugh that sent a chill down my spine. Alex, you're taking this way too personally. It's just business, man. Just business. You always make things harder than they need to be. I'm just doing what I had to do to secure my future. Your future? I spat, the words coming out sharper than I intended. What the hell are you talking about? You're talking like you didn't just walk away from her. Like you didn't just let her believe that I was the fool. What future do you think you have? You've got a woman who will never truly love you. She's just using you, Lucas. Just like she used me. She'll never care about you the way she thought she cared about me. There was a brief silence, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. He wasn't used to being challenged. He wasn't used to someone calling him out. But then, he spoke again, his voice almost too calm, too calculated. You're wrong, Alex. You've always been wrong, and it's time for you to get over it. You're better off without her. You've always been better off without her. The words stung, but they weren't the crushing blow I thought they would be. Instead, they felt like confirmation. Confirmation that I had made the right choice, that walking away from all of this was the only option left for me. Because no matter how much Lucas tried to convince me that Lila had made the right choice, no matter how many times he tried to justify what they had done, I knew the truth. I knew that I had been the one who had been truly betrayed. And I knew that I would never let them tear me down again. You want to know what I'm going to do, Lucas? I asked, my voice steady now, full of resolve. I'm going to walk away from all of this. From her, from you, from everything. I'm done. I'm done being the one who cleans up your messes. I'm done trying to fix things that were never meant to be fixed. So, you can have her. You can have the life that you fought so hard to take from me. But I'm done. For the first time in our conversation, Lucas didn't respond right away. I could hear him breathing on the other end, like he didn't know how to handle what I had just said. And that was when I knew he didn't understand. He didn't understand what it meant to truly be free, to not have to prove yourself to anyone, not even to your family. He thought winning was everything. But for me, walking away from all of it was the only true victory. I don't need you to tell me what to do, Alex, Lucas said. Finally, his voice tight, a little strained. But if you think this is over, if you think I'm just going to let you walk away from this without a fight, you're wrong. I smirked, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. We'll see about that. I hung up the phone and stood there for a long moment, the weight of everything still pressing down on me. I felt like I had just stepped out of a war zone. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was ready to move forward. I didn't need Lila. I didn't need Lucas. I didn't need anyone who had ever made me feel small. I was free, and that was all that mattered. The silence that followed my conversation with Lucas felt like the calm before a storm, but I wasn't sure if the storm was over or just beginning. I stood in the middle of the quiet cafe, my hands trembling slightly from the rawness of everything that had just unfolded. It was as if the universe had thrown me into a whirlwind, spinning me around, dragging me through a maze of lies, betrayal, and confusion. But now, for the first time, I felt something other than anger and hurt, a clarity. A strange, unexpected calmness. I had walked away from the wreckage of my wedding, from Lila, from my family, and I hadn't looked back. The decision had been hard, but it felt right. I glanced at my phone again, the screen dark. I had turned off the notifications, refusing to let any more of them in. I didn't need to hear from Lila anymore. I didn't need her pleading voice, her apologies, her manipulations. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. But as I stood there, a nagging feeling settled in my chest. What now? What did I do next? I could walk away from everything. But the weight of the choices I had made, the consequences of cutting ties with my family, they lingered in my mind. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, and for a split second, my heart skipped. I checked the screen, an unknown number. My instincts told me to ignore it, to leave it unanswered, to pretend like it wasn't there. But something in me made me pick up the phone. I had already left everything behind, so what was one more phone call? What more could possibly be left to say? I pressed the phone to my ear, and before I could speak, I heard a voice I didn't recognize. Is this Alex? The voice was cold, controlled, but with a trace of authority I couldn't quite place. Yes. Who is this? I asked, my voice steady, though a part of me wanted to ask how this person even knew my name. Alex, you don't know me, but I think you need to hear this, the voice said. There was something unsettling about the calm way they spoke. I'm Caroline. I've been seeing Ethan for almost 2 years now. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Caroline? Ethan? 2 years? For a moment, I couldn't process what I was hearing. How was that even possible? How had I been so blind? Everything I had known, everything I had believed about my brother, about my family, was being shattered in real time, piece by piece. I'm sorry, I muttered, my voice shaking now, though I was trying to maintain control. What are you talking about? What does this have to do with me? Caroline's voice remained unfazed, as if she were talking to someone who should already know the truth. Ethan had been with me long before he ever looked at Lila. He never cared about her. He never cared about you either, Alex. He only cared about what he could get out of this situation. He used you, used Lila, used everyone. And now, he's gone. Her words echoed in my mind, and I felt my pulse quicken. Ethan had been with her for 2 years. That's how long he had been hiding this from me, from our family, from everyone. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had felt before. Lila wasn't the only one who had lied. Ethan had been playing us both, orchestrating this entire mess like some twisted game. I thought I was the one who had been used, but it turned out I was just one more pawn in his game. I could feel my chest tighten, and for a moment, the anger threatened to overwhelm me. But then, a cold realization swept over me. I wasn't surprised anymore. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't. Ethan had always been the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in the eyes of everyone, including me. But now, standing in the aftermath of all his lies, I knew the truth. He wasn't untouchable. He was just a coward, running from the consequences of his own actions. And I had been the fool, the one who thought he was better than me, that he could outshine me, control me, manipulate me. But he hadn't won. I had. I don't care about Ethan anymore, I said, my voice low and steady. He's gone. I don't need him, and I don't need anyone else who's been playing games with me. I'm done. There was a long pause on the other end of the phone, and for a second, I thought Caroline might say something else, try to explain herself or justify why she had come forward. But instead, she just sighed, the sound almost like a mixture of relief and resignation. I never meant to hurt you, Alex, she said softly. But you need to understand something. Ethan isn't who you think he is. He's never been the person you've looked up to. He's always been playing people, just like he played you. And Lila, well, she's just another piece in his puzzle. You were never part of his plan. You were just collateral damage. I sat there, letting her words sink in. It was like a bomb going off, the remnants of my world crumbling around me. But in a strange way, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was free. This whole time, I had been so caught up in trying to prove my worth to people who didn't deserve it, to family members who would never see me as enough. And now, I realized, none of it mattered. Thanks for telling me this, I said finally, my voice quieter now. But you don't need to explain it to me. I get it. I'm done with all of them. I'm done with the lies. There was another pause, longer this time, but it didn't matter. I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I wasn't looking for an explanation. I was looking for something else. For my own peace. For my own freedom. I don't want to keep talking about this, I continued. I've made my decision. I'm moving on. Caroline didn't say anything else after that. I hung up the phone, a weight lifting off my chest as I did. For the first time in days, maybe even weeks, I felt lighter. The confusion, the rage, the hurt, they were all still there. But they weren't as heavy. I had walked away from everything. From the life I thought I had, and now I was walking towards something else. Something better, something real. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a choice. And that choice was mine. And I was going to make it count. It had been days since I'd cut all ties. Days since I walked away from the wreckage of my so-called life, leaving behind a broken wedding, a shattered family, and a life that no longer made sense. I should have felt lighter, like I was finally free from the chains that had kept me bound for so long. But instead, I felt empty. The clarity I had once felt was fading, and in its place, a nagging sense of something still unresolved gnawed at me. Maybe it was the feeling that I hadn't yet confronted the truth fully. Maybe it was the looming question of whether I could ever truly move on from the chaos that had consumed me. I was sitting in a small, dimly lit bar downtown, nursing a glass of whiskey that had long since gone warm. The place was quiet, just the soft hum of the jukebox in the corner, and the murmur of a few patrons here and there. It was the kind of place where you could get lost in your thoughts, where no one cared who you were or why you were there. I needed that anonymity. I needed to be alone, to think, to sort through the wreckage of everything that had happened. I hadn't expected it to hit me so hard, the emptiness. The realization that what I had been fighting for all these years had been a lie. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence of my thoughts. I almost ignored it. I had been ignoring everything, every call, every text. But something inside me urged me to check it, to see who was reaching out this time. Maybe it was Lila again. Maybe it was someone from my family. Maybe it was even Ethan, who I had barely heard from since the wedding. I picked it up, my fingers hovering over the screen for a moment before swiping to open it. It wasn't Lila. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't Ethan. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the message that flashed on my screen made my heart skip a beat. The words were short but chilling. We need to talk. It's about Ethan. For a moment, I stared at the text, my mind reeling. What did that mean? What more could there possibly be to say about Ethan? Hadn't I already learned everything I needed to know about him? The lies, the manipulation, the way he had taken everything from me. But something about that message, something about the urgency in those few words pulled at something deep inside me. Maybe it was my last shred of hope, maybe it was my need for closure, but I knew I had to respond. I had to know what this was about. I replied, my fingers tapping out the words quickly. What about Ethan? I waited. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing with possibilities. What could this person want? What did they know that I didn't? And why now, after everything? The reply came almost immediately, a new message popping up on my screen. It read, "Meet me at the old warehouse on 5th. Now." The word sent a shiver down my spine, It felt like a trap. But there was no turning back now. I didn't know who this person was, but if they were willing to reach out to me like this, they knew something. Something about Ethan. Something I hadn't known. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I needed to know. I stood up, leaving the bar without another word. The streets outside were cold, the wind biting at my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was elsewhere, consumed with a need for answers. I hailed a cab, giving the driver the address without a second thought. As the car sped through the streets, the familiar sense of dread began to settle in my chest. It felt like I was walking into the unknown, like the ground beneath me had shifted again, and I had no idea what awaited me at the end of this twisted journey. When the cab finally pulled up in front of the old warehouse on 5th, I hesitated. The building was dark and abandoned, its windows covered with grime and dust. It had that eerie, forgotten quality, like it had been left behind by time itself. The kind of place where bad things happen. The kind of place that would be the setting for a nightmare. I stepped out of the cab, the cold air hitting me full force. I looked around, but there was no sign of anyone. No one waiting for me. The street was empty, quiet, as if the world had decided to hold its breath. I glanced at my phone, the screen still glowing with that ominous message. I had no choice but to go inside. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing in the silence. The inside of the warehouse was just as cold and desolate as the outside. Empty crates and debris littered the floor, the air thick with dust. I took a few steps inside, the smell of mildew and abandonment creeping into my senses. Every instinct in my body told me to turn around, to leave this place and never look back. But I couldn't. I had to know. I had to find out what the hell was going on. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the shadows, and I froze. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't Lila. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't even Ethan. It was a woman tall, with dark hair and a stern expression. She stepped forward, her face partially obscured by the dim light. But there was something about her that felt familiar. Something I couldn't place. "Alex," she said, her voice calm, but with an edge that sent a chill through me. "I'm glad you came." I stared at her, trying to make sense of the situation. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the rising panic inside me. She stepped closer, the dim light now fully illuminating her face. And then it hit me. I knew her. I had seen her before. It was Caroline, the woman who had called me. The one who had claimed to have been with Ethan for years. "You're Caroline," the first said, the words feeling like they didn't belong in my mouth. "You've been with him. For how long?" 2 years. My voice grew harsher, disbelief mixing with anger. "Why are you here? Why did you text me? What the hell do you want from me?" Caroline didn't flinch. She just stood there, watching me with cold, calculating eyes. "I'm here to tell you the truth, Alex," she said slowly. "Ethan wasn't just playing you. He was playing all of us. He's gone, and now I need your help to make sure he never hurts anyone again." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks, and my mind raced to keep up with the whirlwind she had just thrown me into. Ethan wasn't just the man I had grown up with. He wasn't the man I had idolized. The golden boy. No. He was something far darker. And I was about to find out just how deep his betrayal ran. I stood there, my heart pounding as Caroline's words hung in the air like a cloud of smoke. Ethan had been playing all of us. That couldn't be right. This whole time, I had thought I knew him, thought I knew everything about him. He was my brother. We had grown up together, shared memories, shared pain, and yet, I had been completely blind to the truth. The weight of her words pressed down on me, and I felt like I was drowning in them. I took a step back, the coldness of the warehouse floor seeping into my shoes, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, scrambling to process everything she had just said. "He's gone," she had said. Gone. What the hell did that even mean? I needed answers, but Caroline wasn't making this easy. She stood there, unmoving, her eyes locked onto mine like a predator waiting for me to make the next move. She wasn't worried. She wasn't even shaken. If anything, she seemed in control. And that terrified me. How was she so calm? How was she so collected after everything? "Tell me what happened," I said, my voice coming out more demanding than I had intended. I had to know. If there was a shred of truth in what she was saying, I needed to hear it, even if it destroyed everything I thought I knew. Caroline didn't hesitate. She spoke slowly, her words deliberate, as though she had been waiting for this moment. Ethan has been using you, Alex. You were never a part of his plan. You were just a backup, a convenient distraction until he could get what he really wanted. Lila wasn't ever going to be enough for him. He was always going to come back to me. Her words were like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last. I wanted to shout at her, to tell her she was lying, but something in the back of my mind told me she wasn't. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Ethan had always been the one with everything. The charisma, the charm, the power. And I had always been the one in the background, trying to catch up, trying to prove that I could be just as worthy, just as capable. But now, I saw it. Ethan had never cared about me. I had been a pawn in his game, nothing more than a means to an end. You're saying, you and Ethan have been together this whole time? For 2 years? My voice cracked with disbelief, but I pushed through it, needing to hear the truth. And all this time, I had no idea? Caroline nodded, her expression almost sympathetic, but I could see the coldness behind it. Yes, Alex. He and I have been together for a long time. And all this time, he's been stringing you along. Pretending to be the perfect son. The perfect brother. But the truth is, he was always playing a different game. I felt the anger rise up again, hotter now, stronger than before. I couldn't keep my emotions in check. What the hell does that mean? I spat, stepping forward, my fists clenched at my sides. What kind of game was he playing? What the hell does any of this have to do with me? Caroline didn't flinch. Ethan wanted everything. He wanted to control everything. He wanted your life, your place in the family, your position. And he was willing to do whatever it took to get it. He thought he could have it all, Lila. The money, the power, while you stayed in the background, trying to prove you were just as worthy. But you were never enough for him. You were always the second choice. Her words hit me like a slap, but they weren't the worst part. The worst part was the realization that, deep down, I had known this all along. I had known there was something wrong with the way Ethan treated me. With the way he had always been the golden child, the one who got all the praise, all the love, all the recognition. And I had spent so much of my life trying to earn that, trying to prove to everyone that I wasn't just the backup, that I wasn't just the lesser son. But now, I saw it. Ethan had never seen me as anything more than that. What does he want now? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I wasn't going to let him win, not now. Not ever again. Why did he leave? Why didn't he just finish what he started? Caroline sighed, taking a step closer, her gaze softening just slightly. Ethan thought he could control everything. But he never counted on this. He never counted on the fact that Lila would turn on him. He thought he had her wrapped around his finger, but she wasn't going to play his game anymore. She realized too late that she had been a pawn in his scheme. Just like you were. And when she figured that out, she left him. I froze, my heart stopping for a split second. Lila had left Ethan. The woman who had threatened me with him, who had used me to get what she wanted, was gone? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Everything had changed. Lila had chosen Ethan, but now she was gone? Just like that? Where is he now? I asked, my voice low, my fists tightening at my sides. I didn't know why I was still asking about him, still letting him control my thoughts. But I couldn't stop myself. There was something about this whole situation that felt unfinished, like the end hadn't come yet. Caroline hesitated for a moment, as if she wasn't sure how much she should say. Finally, she spoke, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Ethan is hiding. He's afraid. He's afraid that everything he's done is finally catching up with him. He thought he could control everyone, manipulate everyone, but now the truth is out. And he doesn't know how to fix it. He's running from the consequences of his own actions. The finality of her words hit me hard. Ethan, the man I had spent my whole life idolizing, the man who had always been in control, was finally facing the consequences of his own manipulations. And I couldn't help but feel a small, bitter sense of satisfaction at the thought of him being trapped by his own lies. He wasn't untouchable anymore. He wasn't the man who had everything. He was just a coward, running from the truth. I don't care about Ethan anymore, I said, my voice calm, the anger finally subsiding. I don't care where he is, or what he's doing. He's not my problem anymore. Caroline studied me for a moment, and I could see a flicker of something like respect in her eyes. "You're right, Alex, he's not your problem. But you need to understand something. He's not done with you. He won't be until he has everything he wanted. And he'll stop at nothing to get it." I stood there, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. Ethan wasn't done with me. He never would be. But I was done with him. I was done with all of it. The lies, the manipulation, the constant fight for approval. It was over. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own brother, drag me back into their mess. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. And I wasn't going to let that slip away. I hadn't anticipated that walking away from everything would feel like this. For a moment, I thought I would find some sense of closure, some finality to all the chaos that had unfolded. But instead, I felt a strange emptiness, a hollow void that seemed to stretch on endlessly. I had confronted the truth about Ethan, about Lila, about my family, and in some ways, I thought that would be enough. But it wasn't. Nothing could ever be enough when you realize that everything you've worked for, everything you've believed in, has been a lie. I kept walking through the streets, the city lights blurring around me, as I tried to make sense of the events that had led me here. I had been angry, devastated even, when I first left the wedding. But now, it felt different. The anger had faded, replaced by a cold clarity that settled deep in my chest. I didn't need anyone else to define me. I didn't need my family's approval, or Lila's love to validate my existence. The truth was, I had spent my entire life fighting to be seen, to prove that I was worth something. But the moment I stopped trying to fight for it, I realized that I had always been enough. I didn't need to play their game anymore. I didn't need to be anyone's second choice. I was done. But the reality of what that meant hit me like a ton of bricks. I had walked away from everything: my family, my fiancé, the life I thought I had been building. It was hard to swallow. The world I had built in my mind, the version of my life where everything fell into place, was gone. And I had to face the fact that there was no going back. The people I had trusted, the people I thought had my back, had all betrayed me in one way or another. And now, I was on my own. I could feel the weight of the decisions I had made settling in, as I walked down the street. It wasn't just a weight on my shoulders, it was a weight in my bones, in my blood. The emptiness I had been running from was now a constant companion, and I wasn't sure how to shake it. But one thing was clear: I had to keep moving forward. I found myself standing in front of my apartment building, the place that had once felt like a safe haven. Now just another reminder of everything I had lost. I stared up at the windows, the lights flickering inside, and I thought about what I had left behind. There was nothing here for me anymore. I wasn't the man who had lived here before. I wasn't the man who had spent his days trying to make everyone happy, trying to prove that he belonged. That man was gone. And now, there was only me, the man who had walked away from all of it. I took a deep breath and walked inside, my footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway. It felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream, through a life that wasn't really mine. I made my way to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and sat down at the table, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. It was the kind of silence that fills a room when everything has been said, when all the words have been exhausted and there's nothing left to say. But the silence didn't scare me, it felt peaceful. I took a long sip of the whiskey, the warmth of it spreading through my chest, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I didn't need to understand why Lila had betrayed me, why Ethan had played me, or why my parents had always preferred him. I had spent too much of my life trying to find the answers to questions that didn't matter. What mattered now was that I was free. Free from their expectations. Free from the lies. Free from the need to prove myself. But that freedom came with a cost. The cost of being alone. The cost of walking away from the people I thought I could trust. The people I thought would always be there. The weight of that loneliness hit me harder than I had expected. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and for a brief moment, I almost felt like I was suffocating under it. The emptiness, the loneliness, the quiet. It was overwhelming. But then, the phone rang. I glanced at it, already knowing who it was. It had been a few days since I last heard from her, but I wasn't surprised. Lila had been relentless, sending message after message, trying to get me to come back, trying to make me believe that everything was a mistake. But I wasn't going to fall for it again. I wasn't going to let her back into my life. Not after everything she had done. I hesitated for a moment, my finger hovering over the screen, but I knew I had to take it. I wasn't going to keep running from this. Not anymore. I pressed answer, and for the first time in days, I heard her voice. It was shaky, almost desperate. "Alex, please," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know what to do. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could fix everything. I thought we could still have a future together. Please, just come back. We can make it right." I clenched my jaw, the anger rising again, but I held it back. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. "No, Lila," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's too late. You made your choice. You made it clear where I stood in your life. I'm not going to be your backup anymore. I'm not going to be your second choice." There was silence on the other end, and I could almost hear the tears in her voice as she tried to speak. "Alex, please." I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. I made a mistake. "You're the one I want. You've always been the one I wanted." I felt a sickening sense of déjà vu. This was the same script she had used before. The same manipulations. The same lies. And for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered everything she had done to me. Everything she had taken from me. And I realized, with a painful clarity, that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep forgiving her for things that weren't mistakes. They were choices. "No, Lila," I said again, my voice steadier this time. "You don't get to come back into my life. You don't get to play me anymore. I'm done. This is over." She didn't respond right away, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But then she whispered, her voice filled with something like regret. "I'm sorry, Alex. I really am. I didn't mean to hurt you. But it was too late." The words didn't matter anymore. The apologies didn't matter anymore. I had heard them all before, and I had moved past them. I was no longer the person who would fall for her lies, the person who would keep coming back, hoping for something real. I was done. "I've heard enough," I said, my voice cold. "Goodbye, Lila." And with that, I ended the call. The finality of it was like a door closing, the last remnants of my old life slipping away into the past. I sat there for a moment, letting the silence take over again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It didn't feel suffocating. It felt peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. I wasn't looking back anymore. I wasn't waiting for apologies or explanations. I wasn't waiting for anyone to change. I had finally realized something, that I didn't need them. I didn't need anyone to validate my existence, to tell me that I was enough. I was enough. And as I sat there, alone in the quiet, I realized that this was the beginning of something new. Something real. Something that was mine. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready to face whatever came next, on my terms. Unbelievable, right? But here's the burning question. Is Alex truly free, or is there something much worse waiting for him in the shadows? You won't want to miss what happens next in this saga. So, what's your take on this? Was this a victory for Alex, or a tragic end to his story? Drop your thoughts below. The lesson from this story is clear. Never allow others to define your worth. In a society where success is often measured by wealth and approval, remember that true value comes from within. Don't let betrayal, manipulation, or expectations from family or society make you feel small. Stand up for yourself. Trust your own judgment, and never settle for being a second choice. Know when to walk away from toxic situations. No matter how difficult it may seem, your peace of mind, self-respect, and freedom are worth more than anyone's approval. Stay true to yourself, no matter the cost.